Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be bringing you our second installment of our Creating a Whitetail Habitat series. If you missed the first video, I will link it above. But to give you an overview of what we talked about, we discussed the initial discussion you should be having with your hunting group, which is setting goals and realistic expectations for your property. Now, in this video, we're going to actually be diving into the first steps that you'll need to be taking when actually setting up your property for whitetail hunting or creating a whitetail paradise. And we're going to be talking about two things. And the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the general outline of your property, or the general layout that we follow when we set up our properties. And then also, what can you provide your whitetails that the local area does not? So first, let's talk about the general layout of the property. I'm sure you guys have heard the concept, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Well, the same thing applies when you're setting up a hunting parcel. There's more than one way to set up a hunting parcel and be successful. So if you see someone talking about one way to set up a property, but you see somebody else talking about a different way to set up a property, chances are they're both right. You can take the same piece of hunting property, set it up different ways, and still find success. Now, I will say, whatever layout that you choose initially, you want to make sure you understand it. So if what we talk about on this channel makes sense to you, then run with it. But if what we say does not make sense and something else does make sense, then I would say research that more and probably go apply that. Because if you're out there making bedding areas and food plots, deer trails, and you're trying to hunt this property, but you don't really understand the why behind it, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to find success. So you want to make sure that you're actually applying a layout that makes sense to you so that you guys find success. So we'll kind of talk about a few different layouts here. Now, there's definitely more than three, but we'll just kind of buzz through three really quick and then discuss the type of layout that we prefer and why. So a few different examples of different types of property layouts. For example, you could have what's called a pass-through property, meaning the deer never reside on your property. They're really just using your property to get from point A to point B. A lot of times these are smaller parcels, and these parcels can be very successful if set up properly and hunted properly. Then the next two layouts are probably the most popular, and the first one that we'll discuss is what's called an outside-in parcel. Essentially, the concept of an outside-in parcel is that the deer are going to be bedding or residing on either your property borders or on the outside of your property, and then they're going to be filtering in to your property or making their way towards the center of your property during their afternoon bedding to feeding movement. So you'll have some sort of a destination type food plot towards the center of your property, and that's what those deer are going to be gravitating towards during the afternoon bedding to feeding movement. And the idea on that is the deer are going to be moving towards your property in the afternoon. That way you can keep the deer alive and the neighbors can't shoot them. That's kind of the general idea behind the outside in property. The other type of property would be the exact opposite of that, an inside out parcel. Essentially what that is it's a parcel set up so where the deer are residing on the inside of the parcel, and then they filter out to food sources either along the property borders or maybe the neighbor's ag fields or something along those lines. And the idea behind the inside out property is that the deer are going to be bedded in a safe location on the interior of your property, and you're going to set up your property in such a way that you kind of distract them along the way to either shoot them off to the destination food source where you know there's not going to be any hunters, or if there are hunters, you're going to try to keep them on your property as long as possible before they filter out to those fields. There's a few different concepts on how to set up properties. We are only going to be talking about the inside out parcels. And the primary reason that we'd like to focus more on inside out property setups is because everything that we do when it comes to setting up a property, habitat work, food plots, bedding areas, hunting the property has to do with reducing stress for the deer herd. Whether that's hunting stress, whether that's social stress within the deer herd, everything that we do has to do with reducing stress. That includes the general layout of the property, or the inside out layout. And the reason that we're choosing this as our initial starting layout for the property is how we're going to be hunting the property during the season. We really like to hunt the property from the outside in. So we kind of hunt the fringes of the property. Every once in a while we'll take a chance going a little bit deeper in, but primarily we like to leave the center core of the property to the deer. That way they're not being stressed, they're not being spooked. So when the neighbors are out walking around on their properties, spooking deer, driving their ATVs up and down the property line, the deer within our property are going to recognize that, and they're going to know where they're safe and where they're not. So that's kind of the general idea on why we pick the inside out type of property. So the deer are going to be bedding in the middle and moving out towards the edge, and that's when we kind of get our shot at them. The next thing that we want to do is figure out what we can provide our whitetails that the local area does not. And the easiest way to do that is to just go to Google Maps, type in your property address, and look at some satellite images. Now I would suggest zooming out to see the square mile or 2 miles around your property and just see what you're working with. And I'll kind of give you a couple examples here, and then I'll talk about this property and exactly what drew us to this location. The first example here, let's say you're looking at that satellite image and you see nothing but cover, meaning it could be nothing but hardwoods, it could be nothing but swamp, it's nothing but cover, meaning there's no open fields, there's no agriculture, there's no cow pasture, nothing like that, it's just cover. What this tells me is that there's not a lot of food in the area, so you need to be the one that provides it. And unfortunately, with this type of a property, it's gonna be a little bit more work because you're gonna have to be removing trees, carving out these food plots, most likely a destination type food source, and that's gonna be a lot of work. You're probably gonna need to get some equipment in there, but one thing that you can do, you can probably get a logging company in there, talk to them, and if they remove trees, tell them that you wanna remove all the trees in these few areas, then you could take some of the money that you used from the timber harvest and put it towards equipment, to removing the stumps, leveling out your food plots. There you go, you got your food. The next type of area that's fairly common would be one that's kind of got a 50-50 ratio. That would be, you see 50% woods or cover, 50% open field or agriculture, cow pasture, things like that. In this type of a scenario, you really need to be focusing on everything. You need to focus on food and cover. The deer are going to have food in the area. They also have cover in the area. So you got to make sure that your cover is the best, and you have to make sure that your food sources are the most attractive. Now there's going to be more than just these 3 examples, but hopefully you get the idea. But the final example, and that's going to be this property here, would be if you're looking at that satellite image and you're looking at the surrounding square mile or 2 miles, and you're seeing nothing but fields, farming, agriculture, and there's very little cover. Now in this scenario, what do the deer not have? Cover. So what that means is that you need to put a lot more effort into providing high quality cover, because if you do, you're going to be able to hold a lot of deer. And this property here falls into that category, and I'll kind of tell you exactly why we kind of chose this property. So my wife and I were looking for a house on acreage, and this one came up for sale. And as soon as I saw it, I knew this property had a lot of opportunity. Now, just because it has a lot of opportunity doesn't mean it's going to be any good, but it means that the potential of this property is higher than others. So what do I mean by that? Well, when I look at the Google satellite image of this property and I zoom out, there is nothing but agriculture around here. There's very little cover. And I believe in the surrounding 1,200 acres, there's only 200 acres of cover, and we've got 36 acres of that cover right here. So what does that tell me? That tells me if there's any deer in the surrounding 1,200 acres, that we hold 20% of the cover. Deer are not going to be hiding in that hay field or that rye field or that cut bean field in mid-November. They're going to be finding the best fall cover in the area, and if we can provide that to them, we're going to have a huge advantage over the surrounding parcels. And what does that tell me on this property going forward? It tells me that because there's relatively no cover in this area, then I need to focus a lot of my time and effort on creating high quality cover. Now, I'm not saying that food is not important in a location like this. Food is very important, but we need to provide the whitetails what they do not have in the area. And in this area, they do not have cover. So we need to provide them with high quality cover, and we're going to be drawing in an unfair amount of deer compared to the surrounding parcels. So hopefully these ideas and strategies for the initial setup of your property make sense. The first, that you kind of get a general idea for the layout that you want for your property. And again, if you wanted to have the outside in parcel, I would go research that elsewhere, because we typically don't set our properties up like that. We don't have as much experience with those type of properties, so I wouldn't want to steer you in the wrong direction. We focus primarily on inside out properties. If that's something that you want to continue to move forward with, then I would say stick around, and we'll discuss that more in detail going forward. And the second part of the video again was to provide the deer what the local area does not. So if you're in an area with a lot of cover, make sure to provide them food. If you're in an area with a lot of food, make sure to provide them cover. Now again, that does not mean that just because you're providing them with the food that you don't focus on cover, and if you're providing them cover, you're not focusing on food. You need to focus on everything, but you're just putting an emphasis on what the local habitat does not offer. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. Hopefully these ideas and these concepts make sense. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. I'll answer them as soon as I can. But please stick around for the rest of the series, and we will see you guys in the next video.